Hey, it's Chef Sally. I am coming to you today. I know it's been a while, so sorry about that. I've had several projects I've been working on, but today I wanted to show you how I make my Spanish tortilla. I have my cooking group coming over here in a few hours, so that's going to be our appetizer. So I'll be showing you how to make a Spanish tortilla with some smoked paprika mayo. And then I also wanted to shamelessly plug my upcoming cookbook. It's called Most Requested Recipes, and it's going to be a collection of recipes that people typically will ask me for. It's things that clients ask for over and over, and things that people request for catered events or for dinner parties. So I'm really excited to share that with you. And then I'm also working with CreateMyCookbook.com, who is doing my cookbook. They have a new paper called Write in the Rain. So I'm testing this paper today while I'm cooking. Those of you that know me know that I'm a terribly messy cook. So they have this new paper that's water resistant, and you're supposed to be able to wipe it off and have stain-free paper. So I'm going to be testing that out today. So 3 things I'm trying to accomplish today. So let's get started with my Spanish tortilla. That recipe will be in my cookbook. Another shameless plug, sorry. So I've preheated my oven to 375, and typically you would make a Spanish tortilla on the stove top in a cast iron skillet. And the reason I'm not is because, again, I have my cooking group coming over and I'm using that skillet for paella, and I don't want to wash it twice. And I also don't want to clean off my stovetop twice. So I'm going to be making it in the oven. Plus, I'm using a larger pan, so it just makes it a lot easier to put it in the oven. So the first thing we've done is preheated our oven to 375. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of avocado oil, and I'm going to drizzle it in my pan. Just a little, like half a tablespoon. And then I'm going to take a brush, and I'm just going to even it out and coat the entire pan. I'm just using a disposable pan because, again, I don't want to have to wash a bunch of dishes at the end of this little gathering. So this is one less pan I have to wash. Okay, so I've got this evenly coated in my pan. It's a very light coating. You don't need much. Now I'm going to zoom in my camera, and I do apologize. This is going to be a little clunky because I decided at the last minute to film this, and I didn't bring in the person that usually helps me to film this. So I apologize for that. She does a way better job than I do with filming. So what I'm going to do is move the camera down so that you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to take and zoom in a little bit. Maybe. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take my onion. It's just a small sweet onion, and I'm going to cut both ends of it off. And then I'm going to take and cut it in half lengthwise and take off that outer skin. I usually just take off that first layer because sometimes it's a little tough to cut through, and if it's tough to cut through, it's probably going to be tough to eat as well. So I'm just going to put that to the side. Now I've got flat surfaces to work with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start cutting this. I'm going to julienne this onion. So I'm just cutting it into very, very thin slices. Okay, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it in my pan. And then I'm going to do the other half of the onion. Just cut it into very thin slices. This is called julienne. And then we're going to dump that in the pan as well. And then I'm going to take, my recipe calls for 3 large Yukon Gold potatoes. I don't have large ones, I just have the baby potatoes. So I'm just going to cut them in half. And then I'm just going to start slicing them. And they don't have to be tiny slices because these are small potatoes. And then just keep cutting those, putting them in the pan. Again, cut them in half lengthwise, and you can double it up to make it a little faster. This recipe I first had in Spain, and the traditional recipe just has potatoes, eggs, and onions. It's a peasant food, and it is designed to feed large amounts of people, and it's very satisfying, very filling. And you can fancy it up and add other things if you want to, but the traditional recipe just has potatoes, eggs, and onions. A little bit of olive oil, I think. I'm actually adding some garlic to mine. I saw somebody else use garlic in their recipe, and I love garlic, so I thought that was a really good idea, just to give it a little more flavor. So we're going to keep cutting these. Just again, you could cube these too if you'd rather. I'm cooking them in slices because it will take less time for them to cook. And what we're going to do is start these in the oven and let them cook for about 20 minutes just to soften up. Because if you've ever cooked potatoes, you know they take a little bit to soften up and cook. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to add in our eggs and the rest of our ingredients. And then at the end, I will slice it and we'll serve it with a smoked paprika mayo. Smoked paprika is one of my favorite spices. It just gives everything a nice, deep, smoky flavor. It's delicious. I like to actually put it in mayonnaise and serve it on sandwiches, different kinds of sandwiches. And with vegetables, it's delicious that way too. Okay, so I'm going to continue to slice these up, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, now that I have all of my potatoes and onions sliced up, I'm going to take them and I'm going to use just a little bit more avocado oil. Now you can use olive oil if you like. This is about a half a tablespoon again. And I'm going to take, you can use avocado oil or olive oil. I like avocado oil because this particular oil has a smoke point of 460 degrees. So, and it doesn't lose the integrity of the oil, and it has a very mild flavor. So sometimes if you use olive oil, depending on the olive oil that you use, it will carry over the flavor of the olive oil, and sometimes it can be overpowering depending on, again, what kind of olive oil you use. And then I'm going to add probably about half a tablespoon of salt. These potatoes will hold quite a bit of salt, but again, I don't want to over salt them. And then I'm going to add some pepper. I use a generous amount of pepper. I like it. And that's a little pop of color too. And then I'm just going to toss this with my clean hands. Let me zoom this out so you can see what I'm doing. Oh, I miss my camera person. Okay, so I'm tossing this with my clean hands. Just mixing up those potatoes and onions, and it's got a nice coating of oil on the bottom so they won't stick. I'm just going to try to separate some of these slices that are stuck together so it won't take them quite as long to cook. Now, obviously, if you're using the larger Yukon Gold potatoes, the slices will be a lot bigger in diameter. If you're doing the bigger potatoes, I would slice them thinner than this. This is, I would say, about a ½ inch, ¼ inch thick. I would make them even thinner than that if you're using a larger potato, because the bigger the potatoes are, the longer it's going to take for them to cook. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands one more time. And then we're going to just take a sheet of foil. My oven is preheated. I'm going to take a sheet of foil, and we're just going to cover this pretty tightly. And then I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. While I get these started, I'm going to talk to you about this paper that I'm using for my recipe. So this is a new paper that Create My Cookbook has started using. So they have 3 kinds. They have a regular 70-pound matte paper, and then they have a 100-pound glossy paper that's their premium paper, and this one's a new one. It's called Right in the Rain, and it is 32 pounds. It's got a matte finish, and it's still a pretty sturdy piece of paper. I was really impressed with it. So I'm, again, probably going to make a huge mess on it, and that kind of helps determine whether it's going to work or not. So I'm really excited about that. So I'll just leave it here on the counter so I can do what I do with it and make a huge mess. Okay, so while those are cooking, I'm going to take my eggs, and my recipe calls for 8 large eggs. Since I'm feeding a larger crowd, I'm going to use 15 eggs. So I've already broken them up in a bowl, and they kind of come to room temperature. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of milk. This is, I just eyeballed it, right about half a cup. With a quiche, you want to use a lot more milk and a lot more cream because you want that silky kind of custardy texture. And that's not true with a Spanish tortilla. It's more of a heavier, more dense egg dish. So you want to keep the cream to a minimum, but you do want enough in there to make the eggs so that they don't dry out. If you've ever done a quiche and not used enough milk or cream, you know what I'm talking about. And if you overcook the eggs, then they just get kind of clumpy and gross. It's not a pleasant texture at all. So I'm going to take and whisk these while these potatoes are cooking. And just whisk them. Just make sure you break up all the yolks. The last thing you want is a big old clump of egg white or egg yolk in the middle of your tortilla. I've done that before too, and it's kind of gross looking. And it's not pleasant to eat either. So I'm just going to whisk these really well. And you don't really want to make them light and fluffy. You just want to break them up and scramble them like you would with scrambled eggs. You don't want to add a lot of air to them, so I wouldn't go crazy with the whisking. You're just doing enough to break them up. And then once I get these started pretty well, you can see they're kind of smooth now, I'm going to add in the equivalent of 2 cloves of garlic. I use the squeezed garlic because I don't like to clean out the garlic press. So try to be more efficient. So I just add that in, and then I'm going to add a little more salt. You don't want to over salt it because, again, you've got salt on the potatoes, and they're going to absorb a lot of salt. And then I'm just going to add a little more pepper. And then we're going to whisk this, just combine it, make sure that that garlic separates because you don't want a big old clump of garlic in one bite. So I will be back with you when the potatoes are done, and we'll walk through finishing this recipe. Bear with me. As expected, I got some egg all over my paper, so we're gonna see what happens. I'm going to just wipe it off. I'm just using a clean, dry cloth. And I'm just going to switch out cloths because that one's got egg all over it. And there you go. It's like it never happened. Fantastic. I'm impressed. Okay, so our potatoes are done, and our onions. I took them out of the oven. They're still kind of firm because you don't want them to be too mushy, and the eggs are going to need to cook for another 20 minutes or so. So let me zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got my eggs. The potatoes are hot, so they're going to partially cook the eggs when you add them in. So I'm just going to pour them over the potatoes, sorry. I need a nap. And then I'm just going to kind of stir them a little bit. They're not scrambling too much. And if they do, it's okay. You just smooth them out, redistribute. I do that with my omelets too. I try to get them fluffy by scrambling them a little bit, and then I redistribute, and then I do it a couple of times, and that keeps the omelet from staying runny on the top. I hate runny omelets. Okay, so this is ready to go back in the oven. I'm just going to pop it back in there. Now, if you really wanted to bump up that flavor, you could also add some smoked paprika to the top. And that would give it a pretty color as well. Let me bump this back up. So we're going to let that cook for another 20-25 minutes or so, just till the eggs are done. I'm going to leave it uncovered. If it starts cooking too much on the bottom and you see that it's firming up on the bottom, or it's getting too brown on the top, you can always put some foil back over it to keep it from getting too brown. And then when it's finished, we're going to let it cool for a few minutes, and then we're going to cut it into squares. And then I'm actually going to cut it into triangles to make it pretty. So meanwhile, I want to show you how to do the smoked paprika mayonnaise. It is so easy. So you just get your favorite mayonnaise, mine is Hellmann's, and then about a tablespoon, a little under a tablespoon of smoked paprika. And let me, again, aim this down so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to get a spatula so that I can stir. Actually, I've got a spoon. That's okay. I'm just going to dump this in here. And you could also add in some garlic powder if you'd like. I'm going to start with just smoked paprika. And you just stir it up. This is a quick way to make aioli too, if you don't want to start out with egg yolks and whip them into a frenzy and do it from scratch. This is the way you can quickly. Got a clump of smoked paprika in there. It's got a delicious smoky flavor, and again, this makes a delicious topping for burgers. I love it with sweet potato fries. It's delicious. Just trying to smooth out those lumps of smoked paprika. And I am going to add just a little bit of garlic powder. Grab some out of the pantry. Oh, that's chili powder. Don't do that. I want garlic powder. Here it is. So I'm going to add a little bit, just a little, because you've got garlic in the tortilla. So you don't want to overpower it with garlic. And then we'll just serve this on the side. And that tortilla can actually make a beautiful lunch if you wanted to make it a meal. You could take that Spanish tortilla and serve it over some fresh salad greens with a little bit of citrus vinaigrette. And then put some of this smoked paprika mayo on the side. It makes a great meal. It would make a great breakfast too if you wanted to do it that way. So I will be back with you as soon as the eggs are done and we'll finish up. Okay, I think we're done. I took the tortilla out of the oven. It's a nice golden brown. It's too hot to cut right now because it's just going to fall apart. It needs to sit for about 20-25 minutes to just kind of solidify and cool off. And then what I'm going to do is cut it into squares. And then I'll cut those squares in half diagonally. And then it'll be a nice pretty presentation to serve with that smoked paprika mayo. I hope you enjoy the recipe, and please feel free to comment on the YouTube post. Have a great day.